Live from the center of the earth, Girth.
Hello and welcome, Heidi.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's okay, Sammy. How are you doing?
All right. You survived another TCAF.
I guess I did. Yeah. I've been here since Thursday and in beautiful Toronto and just having the best time. As a New Yorker, this is like New York without all the really nasty parts. Although everyone tells me that's an illusion, but it's just such a pleasure to come here. And of course, TCAF is off the charts.
The Toronto reputation tends to be that it's like New York, but clean.
Yes.
I think that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yes. And seriously, the hospitality here is insane. New York, New Yorkers are actually very hospitable and we are very good to tourists. I said, knocking wood, but, we're helpful.
It freaks me out a little bit because one time I was looking for something and I had to stop and pull out like a map just to see where the location was and where I was going. And this dude, nice clothes and everything like this, he stopped and he's like, "You need some help, sir? I can help you, whatever." And it kind of freaked me out. I was like, "Yo, go step away!" Like I just wasn't used to the niceness at first.
No, if we see somebody reading a map, we will help them out. However, if you suddenly show that you're can you swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
It's online radio.
Okay. All right. Online radio. If you suddenly show that you're an asshole, then we turn against you very quickly.
Okay. Yeah.
It is the democracy of the crowd, and when when you show that you're just a total asshole, then we are allowed to treat you like a ass. So, it's just the survival of the fittest.
That's fair though, isn't it? That's a general rule anyways though.
Yeah. It is a little more, in New York. I think the worst thing, I know we're rambling about stuff, but the worst thing I ever saw in New York was as you came out of the subway and at rush hour, it's very, very crowded as you go up the steps. And I was trying to get up and it was stopped. It was just like nobody could get up. The crowd was milling. And I saw it was a woman with a child, like of perhaps two, who was just learning how to climb stairs, and she was teaching the child on the subway.
Oh, come on.
And I said, not that any child deserves to be injured, but I was to say, should the child be trampled, it would be very questionable as to whether it was child abuse or not.
Yes.
So
It's a little on the line.
yes. So now that you know that I'm a heartless ass,
We're on our way now.
yes.
This introduction is going a lot easier than I thought it was.
Yeah.
You also did poutine?
Yes, we did poutine. The first time I came to Toronto was probably 10 years ago, and that was my first time with poutine. I'm not a big gravy fan, so that's impeded my experience of poutine a bit. But this time we decided to. But we had one in our number who had never had poutine.
Yeah, you got to try it. That's
Right. And this is actually, if anybody listens to this, it was Calvin Reed, who I do a podcast with back for Publishers Weekly. That's called More to Come, to plug my own podcast. And Calvin was like, "Oh, I never had poutine." And then he saw the poutine and was like, "Hey, this stuff's pretty good."
Yeah. It's surprising for all the different cultures and different ethnic people in New York City, whatever, and different restaurants and all that stuff. Gravy's hard to come by in New York City.
Yeah, we're not as gravy centric. Yeah, not as much. What? I mean, poutine is really just for like cold nights, though, right? Isn't it like a survival food or something?
Oh, it's like it's for anything really. Like you're having a good day, poutine. You're having a bad day, poutine. Like, it's just kind of like whatever reason you want to. It's like you're having a beer, basically.
Right. Well, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make a steady diet of it, but we had some pretty good poutine while we were here.
Okay, this place where we're recording, the Pacific Junction Hotel bar, they have poutine spring rolls. So it's a spring roll, and inside it is the poutine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, something to consider after we're done here.
Yes.
A lot to try.
You did. You were here obviously for TCAF, and you recently tweeted out, "Great times at TCAF. It filled me with so much pride, hope, and respect."
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Okay. Well, every year I do say TCAF is the number one comic show in North America.
It's a fantastic show.
Yeah. And I mean, I say that with all due respect to San Diego Comic-Con. I would say TCAF and San Diego Comic-Con are the two greatest comic shows in North America. And I say that even though New York Comic-Con is my local, but nowhere near either of them because of a lot of things. So TCAF is the first time I came here 6 years ago. I was blown away, just blown away by what Chris Butcher and the Beguiling staff had done. Beguiling is the comic shop that sponsors the event. So I think 6 years ago there was a lot of pride for indie comics and making that. And I feel like this year there was such a wide range of people making comics, and
It was almost overwhelming a little bit. Like because it was 3 floors.
Yeah.
And it was a lot.
yeah, it was. But I mean, also just like the the number of queer comics cartoonists there, and the range of ethnicities, of colors, of everything. I mean, it really was just people making comics and just expressing themselves in so wonderful a way, and talking about really important ideas and themes as well. So I mean, I would say pride. It's like, I've been in comics a long time, and to see it at this point, and educators as well. Like educators were there talking about learning about comics, and so so pride for that, love because I love comics, and just respect for everybody who's getting out there and doing it, fearlessly.
What was the spark for you? What was like the seduction of the innocent for you? Like that got you into like comic books?
Well, my mother was an artist. My mother was a painter, but she also did comics actually. So, underground comics. And, I grew up in the 70s, so give away my age, but she loved comics. My grandmother loved comics. I got into comics because of the women in my family. My grandfather, I was raised by my grandparents and my mother. My grandfather wasn't as much into them, oddly enough. He liked newspaper strips, so it's kind of the opposite of what you might expect. And so they were always comics friendly, and it was a different time, really. There was great kids comics at that point, and I just loved it.
What were the women in your family reading?
Well, my mother loved pretty much what I love, and I'm sure when she hears about this, she'll listen to it also. So hi, Mom, because she's always Happy Mother's Day one day late. She liked what I liked, like Carl Barks. She liked Little Lulu, was the comic by John Stanley, which is an absolute classic. And as I got older, she did like what I like. She was really into things. Like she liked Howard the Duck was another comic that I got into. And then later in the 80s when Indies came out, Love and Rockets is one of her favorite comics.
Yeah.
She likes good comics, I'd have to say.
That's pretty cool, Mom.
Yeah, she is. She's a very cool mom, actually.
It's funny because that's a weird parental thing where like a parent will kind of give a child some of the culture and some like little touchstones and stuff like that. And then as a child kind of gets older, then they bring some different things home, different types of music, different types of comics. Mm-hmm. And then if the better parents sometimes are the ones that are more open receptive, mm-hmm. then they start being influenced by what the kid brings home.
Right.
And it starts to shift. That's always an interesting shift.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things at TCAF that we were talking about is second generation manga. Like the manga revolution started in the United States about the late 90s with Sailor Moon. So this is going on 20 years ago. So some of the women who were reading manga back then are now parents raising their own kids. And also nostalgia. They're getting, Sailor Moon is big again. I mean, some of the titles that are big are back, and they are obviously accepting of their kids into it. And so we were definitely seeing like this kind of generation of manga, and manga for adult women, josei manga, and even some men actually read comics now. I found. So do you read comics, Sammy?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's unusual. A man reading comics.
There you go. I know. I'm a unicorn. So yeah. It happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you then go from like reading comics and kind of inheriting some from the ladies in your family to like then kind of writing about comics and kind of doing like taking the critical path? Because most people generally when they kind of influenced by comics, whatever, they want to actually start creating them and putting them out. You kind of took a slightly different path and kind of took the more criticism.
Right.
route.
Well, I'm because I was surrounded by artists in my family and I did not have artistic talent. So it wasn't really an option for me to be an artist because, I couldn't fake it at all in my family. Like my family is super talented. Like they're all musicians or actors or writers or something, or, theater, like they do all things, jewelry makers. So I couldn't fake art. So writing really had to be the way I went, with that. And I get asked this question a lot, and I would say that one of the things that's really interesting is that coming to shows like TCAF or, San Diego, going and talking to people and meeting people, new people, I learn more about the answer to that question and about myself and why I maybe got into this, because it's pretty unusual to be a writer about comics.
The reason why you start something is usually not the reason why you continue doing it.
Yes. Like you do it for a lark, and then end up doing it your whole adult life. So, so I would say it just was something I wrote. I loved comics. I loved pop culture. I mean, I loved things that were quote unquote boy stuff. I loved baseball cards. I loved wrestling. I loved, fantasy. I loved Lord of the Rings. I loved all these things that were more considered boy culture. And, I loved comics, and I just was like, had a lot of opinions. And I just wrote a piece that was a review, and I sent it to the Comics Journal, which was the number one magazine about comics at the time, and they published it. That was it. It's the first thing I ever wrote, the first thing I ever submitted anywhere. And back in these days, you would have to type out something, and if you made a mistake, you had white stuff that you put over the mistakes, and you would have to retype it, and then you would make a carbon copy, which is what I did, and then you would put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it. And it's a very complicated process.
You don't miss those days at all, do you?
Boy, I hate going to the post office. The email was the greatest. I was so ready for email the day I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had success. I think also, like you say, what you start out and continue for different reasons. I think also people, I was also into music. That was another thing that I was really good at, and I tried to pursue, but as time went on, I know you have music here, and, you probably, anytime you're involved in the music industry, it's so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a musician, you have to write music. You have to be good at that. You have to learn how to play music and be good at that. You have to learn how to promote yourself and be good at that. And I mean, people who are good at it, it's easy, comes second nature. It did not come second nature to me. And writing was the easiest thing I've ever done, except talking on radio shows. So that's really the easiest thing ever.
It helps. I'll give you a beer now, right? So,
yeah.
So you can chill and hang out. What was the first piece you wrote about for the Comics Journal?
Oh, it was a review of Murata the She-Wolf by Chris Claremont and John Bolton.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it was I was super into archetypal theory and Jungian analysis, Joseph Campbell, all that stuff that was so big back in the day. So I was all about Murata and how she encountered her dark side. I mean, it was really I'm sure if I were to read it now, it's the most pretentious thing ever in history. And, it's funny though, I do remember writing, because this was I think they started to, I don't know the backstory to Murata. I think they started to do a Red Sonja story, and then for some reason couldn't do it. So they're like, oh, let's just make our own character, and we'll do it for Epic Comics, which was a kind of creator-owned line that Marvel did back in the 80s. And so it was really this typical kind of narrative that what we call now has the tropes of rape. And she gets raped, and then she's like, well, I will be a hero and I will kill my rapist. And of course, nowadays, no one would even countenance such a dumb story, why does it have to have this theme? And I remember at the time, just the one thing I remember about this piece is I wrote, one thing that really bugs me about this story is the rape theme. Why does she have to be raped to be a hero? Why can't she just be a hero? And so I know they meant well, but now it's interesting to me. And another thing I learned at TCAF was that what maybe when I was growing up might be called an archetype is now called, a trope. And it might be a good trope or a bad trope, or just a dumb trope. And it's really interesting seeing how readers today are much less accepting of things that are so easy like that, and I mean, of course, rape narratives and rape culture are totally so stupid and horrible and damaging.
There's also people kind of playing around with stuff, being very meta too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also that kind of awareness too, which we didn't really have, where kind of people are playing it on the nose too.
Yeah.
We're I'm in a comic book, wink, wink.
Yeah. I mean, that was done. Scott Pilgrim, to name the local favorite. was obviously such a he played with that whole level and with video games and in the storytelling, and he made it fresh and new, and but I see people trying to do that sometimes in their comics, and it's not as fresh and new.
Yeah, I think it's when you gotta add the wink wink at the end there that it's like if you have to kind of do that, or like that was the punchline, then
Right.
you kind of flopped a little bit.
Exactly. So yeah, there's all different levels of storytelling and in that way, and it's really interesting to me. I mean, that's what keeps me doing it, I guess, is because I love seeing how these things develop and how things are like I said, like people readers today wouldn't stand for that. I wouldn't stand for like these just regressive ideas, and things that are problematic get called out right away.
But why do writers or editors or publishers, whoever you want to throw under the bus for that, like why do they kind of keep returning to some of those ideas though? There's got to be a reason why, isn't there? Is it just laziness?
I think it's that, but I also think there's somewhere in the middle of all of this, I mean, I think people have to work through things, and I think some of the things that I mean, I do go back to Bettelheim and his use of fairy tales. And I mean, I know a lot of this thinking is not in vogue right now. So, and I haven't read enough to know how it's been revamped or, how it's taken. So anyone who listens to this is going to hate me. So I'll put that right in there. But I question, I'm a journalist, and I do question everything. I don't take it at face value. I always have to weigh it against other things in the past and possibilities. So I think in storytelling that I think some people are still working through their own issues, and they might have been raised in a way that was not as open-minded or not as progressive as it should have been. And so they still have these issues that they haven't identified. And in their storytelling, I think there's still, I mean, these are issues that people do deal with, and I don't think it does any good to say they don't exist, but obviously they need to be addressed, and they need to be, now I'm losing the word, but they need to be admitted and just dealt with, in a way that to move forward. It's more almost like storytelling therapy. I mean, why did Chris Claremont write so many rape stories? I mean, why are so many? I mean, X-Men have traumas, and Storm is the orphan and all that sort of stuff, and in some ways, trauma makes a hero. I mean, it is true that trauma makes a hero. And male heroes have trauma. Unfortunately, so many times the trauma is because their wife or their daughter or their woman got killed. So what is the source of this trope? I mean, it's partly just how we value women in society, obviously, but it's also like men aren't able to process it, I don't think, except in this very destructive way.
Well, I think it's also just a very easy visual, I guess. If we go moving away from that slightly, but just like when Uncle Ben died, right? When Spider-Man, it's then now he has this reason to become Spider-Man, and it's a very easy sell, and you just kind of go on your way, and the audience gets it. Bruce Wayne's parents, when they got the peril hit the sidewalk, and then the mom's dead, whatever, then boom, it makes sense. The audience gets it, and now he has quote unquote enough motivation, enough reason to be Batman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you notice, a lot of heroes who don't have that are not as successful characters. I would say Green Lantern is a great example. A character that I never had any interest in whatsoever. But I knew a lot of guys who really love Green Lantern. And I was trying to get to the bottom of why they love him so much. And I do understand, I mean, when they made the movie, I went to go see it. I was curious. And this is, man, I don't know if you want to talk about, superheroes in media, but, this was a huge movie for Warner Brothers and the development of all that. And
Ryan Reynolds for him too, as well. He need to kind of get out there and
right. Well, right. And, the first time he struck out, and, but with Deadpool, he was, right on, this guy's a 2-time. He's Deadpool and he's Green Lantern. But you watch the movie and you're like, okay, so he looks like Ryan Reynolds, and he's a great test pilot, and he's dating Blake Lively, and he works for her father's company, and his problem is you flew too fast one day. Wow. Oh my God. This is like heartbreak. I mean, just how are you going to overcome this? And, Jeff Johns, to his credit, saw the flaw in this. And I know he added the whole father issue with Green Lantern, which is, I mean, the guy has no problems. It's like, oh, hello, I'm a member of the International Space Police now, and we're going to train you how to be a space policeman. You're going to fly around the galaxy and have fun and adventures in your magical powers where anything you imagine you can make. This is just so much conflict. I mean, the guy has, how do you sympathize with this character?
Right.
So, sorry, Green Lantern fans. But anyway, Jeff did add an element of his having father issues. And which is great. I mean, he had to have some level of pain, but even so, when you watch the movie, you're like, what is this guy's problem? It's like, oh, you're training and like you didn't like the funny looking guy with the chicken head yelled at you and you went home to your gigantic loft apartment and sulked. Like, wow, I am like, my heart is breaking for you, buddy. Yeah. I mean,
that makes sense though. So then if it doesn't come from the common tropes, then I guess then you just got to add something like Green Lantern, like his issues with his dad then, or you try and find something.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a storyteller. I'm an editor. I mean, I have edited comics. One of the comics I worked on was Why the Last Man, in its early phases. And, I mean, I don't even have to take credit for that. Brian Vaughan is a genius and Pia Guerra, did a fantastic job. So, I mean, I had zero to do with that book, except for saying this is a great idea.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure. Like I say, I see a transition going on with how people approach their storytelling, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a perfect example, which has huge father issues in it, right? And I was very lukewarm on the movie. I loved the characters. I loved what they were doing. I love the laughter. I love Chris Pratt. I love Zoe Saldana. Drax was, laughing my ass off. But I was like, where's the story? What is like you sitting? I literally fell asleep in the movie. I literally fell asleep. I was in one of those really comfy recliner chairs, like out, and I was like, oh, Ego, no, what is Ego doing?
Falling asleep generally the review.
And to me, that was a flaw. It was a flaw that there was not enough drama and not enough tension. But then other people I talked to just loved it because they loved the characters, and that's all they wanted was to see the characters having fun and doing fun things. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to understand that. To me, I like drama. I mean, I'm old school, so I like drama and conflict and, like Star Trek. Basically, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is an episode of Star Trek. It's exactly the episode of Hugh Cross Who Mourns for Adonis and the Squire of Gotham. Squire, of Gothos. Right? Yeah. Sammy just nodded his head. And for
it was a good reference.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've been rewatching Star Trek, but then on all of those, there's tension and danger and like a ticking time bomb of what's going to happen. Whereas in Guardians, there's literally no ticking time bomb. It's like, so what's happening here? Well, I don't know. I'm going to talk to my dad. See what he says. Okay. Well, you know what? We'll just go run through this meadow. Oh, that's awesome. Let's have some sexual tension now. Great idea. And then suddenly, like, you know what? This is great. I love it. I'm going to be a god. This is so cool. Like, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, you know what? That's great. And I guess killing your mom was, worth it. Like, what? You killed my mom? Yeah. I mean, come on.
You just save people money from going to see the movie.
I know. I'm sorry if you have, but you saw it already. Come on, people. Like, spoiler.
So I want to go back to, so you then decide to flip the switch and go into journalism and comic journalism. But at the time too, there wasn't always like a lot of stuff. There was like Wizard back in the day, and that was more like kind of like almost like a giant commercial for like stuff Marvel and DC and everything was kind of doing. The Journal, obviously, where you submitted your stuff, they were doing some legitimate criticism, doing some real interviews and things like that. Was it kind of intimidating kind of going to a field like that where there really wasn't a field? I mean, movies have had like lots of criticisms and critics for years. Whereas comics kind of took a little while to get going, even as the medium was exploding.
Well, I mean, to me, it was more exciting to be a pioneer and to be able to write about things that no one had written about, or hopefully make some kind of discoveries. I think you said you had Scott McCloud here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Scott and I and Ivy were pals back in the day, and before Understanding Comics came out, and we talked a lot about this stuff. And he definitely was an influence on my criticism, and his talk about how the medium worked. And I'm super lucky in that I got to be friends. I mean, this is like a long time ago in comics. I mean, it's 30 years ago. Like, again, showing my age. And there weren't as many people in it. So, if you were at the bar, you would be at San Diego, you would be hanging out with Scott McCloud and Will Eisner and, Rick Veitch and Todd McFarlane. I mean, so that's just who was in the bar. I mean, it wasn't like, like those were the people who were around. So yeah, I was more excited to do it as kind of, discovering things. And I think we're now really moving into a very exciting time. So just to circle back when you asked me why I stuck with this. So at the conference at TCAF, they had this library and educators day conference that I hung out with, and I met quite a few of the people who were involved in it. And there was a lot of scholarly talk about verbal thinking versus visual thinking and how comics cross over. They're being used in schools. I mean, if you think about it, Mouse is by Art Spiegelman. It's about, his parents being in the Holocaust, being in a concentration camp. And this is one of the major texts about the Holocaust that's still, I mean, it's not like among comics. I mean, among texts about the Holocaust. And so comics really have become an important medium.
Here in Canada, we have a Louis Riel comic book. I think it's Chester Brown.
Yes.
And that one made a lot of noise as well for the same reason that Mouse did, because it was telling the same story, but it just kind of opened it up, and it was a whole different perspective,
right,
for people to kind of see it. And then now you have this kind of visual narrative that goes along with the storyline, right? Mouse was very moving because you now see people being persecuted, and it's a lot harder to kind of walk away from an image like that.
Yeah. And I mean, the animal, of course, metaphor also. I mean, that was the genius of Mouse, is that he broke down the prejudices that you had, like if there were any lingering prejudices, by putting them in animal form, it forces you to confront this even more directly. Louis Riel, I love that book. I mean, Chester is such a crazy man. Did anybody, I mean, like, how did his book on prostitution go over here? Did anybody read that?
That one I didn't really hear much about. I think that kind of just went a little bit under the radar. I think if people didn't know what to do with that, so they're like, we're just gonna let this go, and we'll just like pimp out, we'll just like focus on Louis Riel and then like call it a day.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a book here now that I haven't read, but I want to. That's by Gord Downey and Jeff Lemire.
The Secret Path.
Yeah. Which I've heard has really made a splash.
That's another one that's similar to Mouse, because it's quote unquote an untold story of how we've kind of been dealing with our native Indians, and like we've been really bad to them, actually. But I mean, you guys too in America.
Yeah, we're no angels. Let me believe.
Yeah,
we're worse. I don't know. It's a competition, sadly.
Right. So it just was kind of dealing with it's a story that deals with that. And Gord Downey put some music to it, and Lemire, who's really good at that kind of rural type Ontario, Canadian kind of story. Just kind of documented that, and it's a very moving book, and there isn't even a lot of dialogue, just a lot of visuals. But yeah, it is like you feel it, like it's a gut punch.
Yeah, no, that's what people were telling me. I wasn't able to get a copy, but I'm gonna try to look for it in the States. It hasn't really come to the States. I mean, it is a particularly Canadian comic, as I understand, but it certainly sounds like it's a very universal message that, well,
like I was saying, like I mean, like there's been like Standing Rock and stuff like that in the States is kind of that's kind of brought a lot of bit more attention to the plight of the Indians and like that kind of issue. And then here we've been dealing with our own things as well, and kind of like they're starting to put more and more pressure on the government to kind of like do something and like provide like drinking water, like clean drinking water.
Wow.
So yeah,
just little things
like that. Like let's have little victories like that, right? Better schools, like our actual schools, things like that. And so, but that's like part of how those conversations kind of get sparked, right? Is sometimes people read these things like Louis Riel or The Secret Path, and then people are like, "Oh, I didn't actually know this was actually happening."
Right. But that's what we were talking about a lot on Friday at the Education and Library Conference. was how comics are just such an incredible medium for this. And because they do speak to people on verbal level and a visual level. And to be honest, it's like if you were to make a movie about Louis Riel, it might not, it would cost, you'd have to have a pretty good budget to do it. And, to raise $100 million to make a movie, probably not going to happen. Whereas Chester Brown can make this comic and it can really have an incredible amount of impact. We were talking about some of the comics biographies, actually. About people, like that's one of the really cool things about comics is that you can do these biographies of people that you could never do a movie of because no one would ever finance it. And you can bring these people back and show how cool they were and amazing. Yeah.
And then it feeds into what you're saying, which is like it's a good way to kind of hook the kids in, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Here's a comic book. I'm like, that's my homework? Like, all right, fine then. Like, then you get a little bit more, like if you just give them a dry textbook or whatever with just the facts and this is who Louis Riel was, or like going back to Mouse or whatever, this is what the Holocaust was. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, you can read the statistics and these many people died and this is how they died in the ovens and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't necessarily like move you. It doesn't mean that you're cold. It just doesn't always move you sometimes, right?
Right.
But then when you start to actually see the visual like story and the visual language, you're like, oh, that's actually not good at all. That's pretty evil.
Yeah, it's very evil.
Yeah.
And it makes you experience it a lot more directly. Yeah. So that is really like just one of the powers of comics. I know you asked me a question that kicked this off, and I wasn't. It was about why I stuck with it, and well, in the
just
90s.
because at the beginning too, like it took a while for journalism and criticism combined for comics to properly take off, even as the medium, especially in the 80s. In the 80s, the medium of comics was exploding, and it was doing really, really well. But it took a little while for kind of like the journalism, the criticism to kind of follow suit.
Yeah, and I think right now actually is it's a little difficult. There are no scholarly journals of comics. There actually, I take that back, there are, but there are none that are popular. There are no magazines about comics anymore. There might be a few, but they don't, they're not very influential. Print isn't very influential necessarily anymore. Obviously people go online, and I think when we were talking about doing this, you were, alluding to the current problems of comics journalism. Doesn't pay very well. And so like if, I've been doing it for a long time. I run my own site, comicsbeat.com. I do have other writers, but it's not very lucrative. I'll just put it that way. It's not very lucrative. And I live in New York. So, I have to, take on a lot of other kinds of work just to pay to be able to do it. But I love doing it so much. And I see, other sites. A site that so many great writers from Canada are part of is Women Write About Comics with Megan Purdy. And they run some amazing criticism. I think that some of the best comics criticism is on that site. No question about it. And I don't think, they don't make that much money doing it, if any at all. It's certainly not sponsored or anything. It's just a labor of love for them.
Yeah. So you then decide you want to go down this road, and then you start getting a couple of pieces published. And then how did then you decide to do your own thing then, your own comics beat? Like
my own website?
Yeah.
Well, that started because one thing that we've jumped over here is in the 90s, I was an editor. I was making comics. I worked for Disney, and then I worked for DC Comics. And so I did work for Disney doing kids comics for Disney Adventures magazine. Then I went to DC. I did their kids comics for a while. Then I went to Vertigo, where I did Y the Last Man. And but it didn't last. I didn't work for too long at DC. And then I was, I'll admit, like Vertigo was my dream job. Editing comics for Vertigo was probably the job that I thought I was meant to do. And, I had some hits, some misses, and moved on. And I was like, what should I do now with my life? And some people were like, Heidi, why don't you go back to writing about comics? And I'm like, well, that's a great idea. Little did I know. So I had the second chance. But this was when the internet was, I don't want to say it was getting off the ground, but kind of it was actually, because it was 2002 when I started doing the beat. So 15 years ago.
Way to go. 15 years is a good run.
I know. And to be doing the same kind of thing for 15 years of the internet is kind of insane, and nobody does it. And when I see my peers who are still doing it, I'm kind of like, are they still doing it? What are you talking about? So I don't know. I question every day. Luckily for me, comics are bigger than ever, as we've been talking about. So I actually went, I guess it's kind of an interesting story. I was approached by Rick Veitch, who is a cartoonist. He worked on Swamp Thing with Alan Moore. He actually took over writing Swamp Thing after Alan Moore left. And he also did his own line of comics back in the 90s that was called the Heroica. And there's 2 books that I love, Brat Pack and The Max Immortal. Have you heard of these?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So good. I'm so glad. But they are brilliant. There's 2, I just think they are so well done, and they're just not as well known as they should be. But anyway, Rick had a website about comics called The Pulse. And he said, we want to expand this, and why don't you come work for us and do this? And I was like, sure. I mean, he's one of my favorite cartoonists. I'm like, yeah, you can be my boss. That's great. And so me and a writer named Jen Contino, we did The Pulse. Now, back in the day, there was Newsarama was around then, and Comic Book Resources was around then. But Newsarama had just launched. It was a brand new site. And because Mike Duran and Matt Brady, who did it, had been hosted at some other site, Silver Bullet or something. They had a different site, and then they broke off and did their own thing because there was so much money. And so it was very competitive. It was like the frontier. It was like the Pulse versus Newsarama versus, Jonah at CBR, Jonah Weiland, who ran CBR. He was more of like a neutral figure. But I'll tell you, Newsarama and the Pulse, it was like the battle of the sexes, because it was me and Jen versus Mike and Matt, and competing for these stories. And it got heated. There was some like feudy stuff that went on, and not that Matt or Mike are listening to this, but if they ever did, they would be laughing, trust me. And Jen also, because they know exactly what I'm talking about. But it was fun. Oh my God, it was so fun, because people would reveal everything back then. They didn't know, right, how to be secret about stuff.
Yeah.
So we got like, even just for an example, all right, I mean, nobody's okay. So Marvel was run by Bill Jemas, and they were doing their kind of new Marvel Ultimates line, but then they were launching all these new stuff. And Jen and I got wind of the fact that they were relaunching Epic Comics. And like, we emailed a bunch of people we knew. I was like, what do you know about this? And the people were all like, oh yeah, here's what's going on. And like they tell you, says, oh, just don't use my name. And like, we got this and like right tomorrow, I was like, oh, is this true? Like, oh, no comment. And, and then we wrote this killer story that was like everything they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it made like, I know nowadays Bleeding Cool has that. And newsflash, almost everything on Bleeding Cool is a plant from Marvel and DC. Like, basically they give Rich stories that he won't run other shit. So, I mean, it's like, oh, Bleeding Cool has learned. Yeah, that you learned because someone at DC told you that. So anyway, I don't mean to destroy anybody's illusions.
But it's like saying wrestling's fake.
Oh, I know. It is fake. Sometimes, I don't know. But yeah, so we had the story, and oh my God, there was so much. We got so much in, like, oh, we're never giving you anything again. We're never going to talk to you. We're never going to give you any real stories. I'm like, well, like, fine, we don't, and then we went on. And then of course, within a few years, it was like, oh, if you talk to people, you were going to get fired. So, freelancers quite wisely stopped telling everybody but oh, it was so great. You could run so many stories. And, I remember there was this other story that, at DC Comics, like basically they, like, everybody at DC got free comps and would trade them in at a store, in New York. But you technically weren't supposed to do that. So somebody got caught doing it, because not only were they trading in, they would take their pile of comps, trade it in, get credit, and then they'd go buy like a statue or something really expensive, and then they'd sell it on eBay. So they had a real, maybe that's pushing a little far. And there was like, a big hullabaloo. People got fired. And I mean, I wrote the story and I called up people again. I was like, whoa, what's going on? I was like, oh, I can't believe there's a cold cast statue ring at DC. And again, the story is lost to the sands of the internet. But I mean, you could never write a story like this today. Like, you just never could do it. You would never get people to go. I mean, not even be quoted, off the record. So, yeah, it was a lot more fun in that way because you could really break things. I mean, I still break stories, but it's not the way we were. I mean, we were just smashing things with hammers then. Now it's like, oh, maybe we told you that you should write about this, and I'm like, okay, and I mean, you still have to. I mean, I try to investigate. Sometimes, I mean, I do try to look into things and once in a while do something that's really an investigative journalism as best I can. But, the Pulse was actually better funded. It was funded well enough to pay two people, myself and Jen. And, this is 15 years ago. And, now for me to spend like a week even working on one story would just not be economically feasible.
That's for almost all writers now. And one of the things I like about the Comics Beat is that you also do focus a lot on the economics of comics. You have surveys to see kind of like how much people are getting paid per page and different things like that. I think the economics of comics also kind of circles back to what we were saying about the tropes as well. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people will demand that they want to have like left-handed characters or more female characters or black characters or whatever the rally cry is this week. And it's just sometimes they don't also understand the economics of it. Like they've tried sometimes, like something like Gotham Academy, for example, recently. I think that ended up at like about 12 issues or so. And it just wasn't enough market to quote unquote sustain it.
Yeah, but I what I think is really important to look at about that, Gotham Academy got canceled, and so did all those other comics that weren't about quote, more progressive characters.
Correct.
So, I think like people have pointed to Marvel's, Marvel's a whole other thing where we could talk for another hour about that. But I get in so much trouble.
Oh, the recent diversity comments? Or?
Yeah, all that. But I mean, it's just that I mean, I think all comics are selling badly now, I mean, it's a real struggle. And that's what, there's, DC did do like basically when I worked at DC 15 years ago and when I started the Pulse 15 years ago, even saying like women read comics is a statement that you must defend and give proof. Like, where is the proof? What do you mean? How can you say that? And, nowadays, I mean, if you go to TCAF, it's like at least 50% is women. I mean, probably more than 50% of the exhibitors are female creators or non-binary creators or trans creators. Like, certainly not just cis men creators at all. And so, I mean, you have to have material that appeals to different groups, But I mean, I think there's a certain reactionary crowd in comics that just, obviously it's not for them, and you have to have all that. But I think you have to grow. That's the whole message of the Beat. Is there's all these other markets outside comic shops. There's libraries. There's indie bookstores. There's Amazon. There's Barnes and Noble. I know. What's your book chain up here?
Chapters Indigo.
Yeah, is that still around or?
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's our big one. That's our only one, really.
Right.
We have a couple of smaller ones like Book City, but yeah, Chapters Indigo, and our library is fantastic. They have an amazing graphic novel collection.
Right. So yeah,
that allows people to kind of try stuff as well that maybe you wouldn't necessarily go down that road. Because then you don't have to necessarily invest any money or whatever.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the library, but every book that's in a library was purchased. I mean, that's the great thing about libraries is they have budgets, so they spend money. So, getting people to kind of be aware of these. Marvel, for all their flaws, has done a really great job getting some of their books into Scholastic book fairs. I don't know if you have those up here, but okay, yeah, you do. So these are for kids. They sell a lot of books. The books are discounted, so it's not like you make, $10 per volume sold. Maybe you make $1, but you sell like 200,000 copies. So it can be very like for a publisher to get into the Scholastic book fairs, usually like, woohoo, woo.
Yeah.
It's really exciting for them. And, Marvel's gotten in there. And guess what? Kids like Marvel. Oh, wow. That is a brain. How did that ever happen?
That's some good investigative journalism.
Yep. Yes. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is a scoop.
Yeah. One of the interesting things with our library system is when you reserve a book, like a graphic novel or a trade or whatever, it'll tell you where you are in the list, like how much demand there is for it. And I'm always kind of surprised at some of the books, because some of the books seem a lot more people talk about them. Gwen, what's her name? Gwen, she's the spider girl. Gwenpool, yeah. It just seems a lot more popular, but then when you look at how much is reserved or whatever, it's only like 10 or 20 people or whatever, and like you think there'd be a lot more demand for it.
Yeah. Wait, where's this website?
It's on our Toronto Public Library. So
my God.
Yeah.
To the internet, Robin. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I am all over this.
So
I am all over this.
So it's interesting as a kind of informal way of like kind of gauging. But again, then some of the stuff for like Batman, you'll see 80, 90, 100 demand, like 100 people want to reserve like a Batman book, new Tom King stuff, whatever. So you'll kind of like, that's kind of pretty consistent, but it's just the other stuff that's a little bit more off the
well,
yeah, so as an informal kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point you can't reinvent the wheel. I mean, you don't have to, I mean, as we alluded to at the start of this podcast, you know what? Batman's a great character and he is rooted in pain. And my theory is very radical, that because he is rooted in pain is why he is a great character. And that is why, I mean, Batman just appeals to so many people. And guess what? There's been an awful lot of really good Batman books. Even some that are very controversial, like The Killing Joke, obviously. But, Alan Moore's a great writer. Brian Bolland's a great artist. That book anyone can read, as dark as the message is and as troubling as the storyline is with Barbara Gordon. It's still very accessible to people. So that's why I keep speaking to new generations, for better or worse.
And so with your work now, are you also hoping to kind of illuminate some of the stuff that's going on? Because like you said, when you were at TCAF, there's a ton of stuff that's going on. And I know a lot of comic book kind of chatter kind of focuses on the big two, I guess big three, if you want to throw in Image as well. They've been kind of growing the last couple of years. Is it kind of to get away from some of that stuff and then kind of focus on more of the indie stuff, or are you trying to balance between the two?
Well, I think if you run a website about comics, you're always going to have to cover Marvel and DC, because that is the most, it's the most popular stuff. It's the biggest characters, the longest running. But Image is huge, huge, huge. I mean, Walking Dead, I'd argue, is as big as anything, anywhere, anytime, obviously. And for me personally, my favorite publishers are still Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly and Koyama Press, and like indies, very small, like Retrofit is a publisher that's run by Box Brown, and they put out all these little comics that are kind of like little chapbooks, I'd almost say. They put out a book last year called Libby's Dad by Eleanor Davis that has won a bunch of awards. And it's about kids who are at a pool party, and there's a rumor about Libby's dad, whether he has a gun or not. And it's maybe only 32 pages long. It's not very long. And they kind of go through this whole, it's an amazing story that deals with childhood themes, violence, and, it's deep. It's deep. There's a book that came out at the show by Gillian Tamaki, who is a Canadian cartoonist. You Canadians are taking over.
Well, you mentioned Drawn and Quarterly. That's a fantastic, out in Quebec. It's a fantastic publisher.
Yeah.
And and even at TCAF, you get to see a lot more of the Canadian talent. I mean, it's its own kind of, in a weird way, subgenre. You're talking about like there's like queer comics, there's like French comics, and then like Canadian kind of comics is almost like another subgenre.
Yeah. Well, you have a plethora of really great publishers here. Drawn and Quarterly, Koyama Press, as I mentioned. Conundrum is great.
That's right.
There's another one whose name I can't remember. But yeah, and the cartoonists, like I say,
even the people that are dominating at Marvel and DC too. There's a lot of Canadians.
Yeah.
Jeff Lemire is doing a ton of stuff.
Yeah. Chip Zdarsky, he's done really well. There's a bunch. Absolutely. But Gillian Tamaki is her book is out from Drawn and Quarterly. It's called Boundless. It's a collection of her short stories. To me, this is my book of the year thus far. Just her stuff is it's like Alice Munro or Raymond Carver or I mean, you name it. These are short stories that are searing and powerful and like just cover so many topic. I mean, some of them are very I mean, some of them they're not direct. I mean, it's not like, a page panel one. Yeah, I mean, you have to really put a lot into reading her stuff, kind of work at it, but her drawing is so amazing and just her storytelling is just incredible. So I can't recommend that book enough. Boundless. I think it debuted at TCAF. It'll be out in shops in a couple of weeks, actually.
So if people want to kind of follow up on some of these threads and some of the work that you're doing, where can they find you online?
Okay, well, I'm on comicsbeat.com. That's COMICS, Comics Beat, BEAT. Or if you just Google Beat Heidi, it will come up. And so that is my daily website, although I haven't posted today because I'm here doing this. And
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. It's great for me after I go to a show to just kind of talk about things and kind of process it by talking about it. So Comics Beat every day. I have wonderful writers there. We run sales charts. If you like wonky stuff, that is kind of something that we specialize in. Like we like to run sales charts. We talk a lot about retailing. So we have a lot of nitty gritty behind the scenes, like kind of little by maybe like deadline, but we also have interviews. One thing, what you were talking about, comics, this year we've done a feature that's called Free Comics, a year of free comics. So I tried to do it every day. I didn't do it while I was traveling. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it all. But every day links to comics. And for me, it's like, some of them are Comixology. Like you can download all these Batman black and white stories from Comixology for free. And then there's web comics that you might not have heard of and just good stuff. So anyway, that I having a lot of fun with that. That I'm on Twitter. I'm at Comics Ace, COMIXACE. And I'm Comics Ace like everywhere. On Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Vine. I was on Vine as Comics Ace.
You're really hip for somebody who's using a typewriter not so long ago.
Yeah. Well, I see what the kids are doing and I copy it. Successfully or unsuccessfully, much more likely. But yeah, Comics Ace, you'll find me everywhere.
Thank you, Heidi, for coming in and talking comics and stuff. We just kind of scratched the surface.
Yeah. Well, I love to blab, as you might have noticed. So
yeah, I could just turn the mics on and just gone and made a sandwich.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah. But this is great. No, thank you for having me. This is really. I'm glad to be here in Toronto and talk about comics. That's all. That's what I love doing.
Thank you.